This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
as we all apparently agree, Social Security and Medicare is off the books now, right?
President Biden takes the jeers and uses them to protect Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security.
I say with great pride that Tennessee is leading the nation.
Governor Bill Lee titled his fifth State of the State address as Tennessee leading the nation.
Shown any willingness to follow through on his words in the past, so we'll see where it goes from here.
Tennessee Democrats disagree.
Their primary mission is to prevent people from getting abortion.
And Governor Lee wants to provide $100 million to crisis pregnancy centers, which critics say provide no maternity care.
We do not provide prenatal care. We want them to be seeing a great OB.
And give out false and misleading information. More in our This Week cover story. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of This Week. President Biden delivered his second State of the Union address this week, turning the tables on hecklers by having them agree no cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security. In Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee delivered his fifth State of the State address, outlining his goals for his second term. But first, a freshman Brentwood Republican House member wants to define the term sex as what is listed on a person's birth certificate.
Brentwood Republican Representative Gino Bolso filed a bill that would define the term sex as a person's immutable biological sex as determined by anatomy and genetics existing at the time of birth. He says it's not an anti-LGBTQ bill.
Our goal is to help people, not to harm anyone. And what this does is provide clarity as to what a statute meant when it was enacted by the General Assembly and signed by our past governors.
I asked him what his response would be if people argued this bill unfairly targets the LGBTQ community.
My response would be that the bill actually provides clarity for a term that's already in the code. And the greatest gift that any legislature can give to the judiciary is a clear, succinct piece of legislation.
It's a response Democrats take offense with.
We weren't born yesterday. We know hate when we see it, and we will call it out when we see it.
Knoxville Democratic Representative Gloria Johnson echoed a sentiment Democrats have been pushing lately, that these types of bills aren't necessary given the other problems in Tennessee, like issues with DCS, low teacher pay, and rural health care.
It's interesting that all these bills that we absolutely don't need somehow have to do with the LGBTQ community.
Still, Bolso feels confident.
Do you expect some sort of opposition from the other side?
Frankly, I don't. I mean, I think it's so obvious that when the code uses a term, it's important to be clear about what it means, that this bill will likely, I think, pass overwhelmingly in both houses.
With a Republican supermajority, the possibility certainly exists. In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
Now to our This Week cover story. Tennessee's governor wants to send $100 million to anti-abortion centers. They're often called crisis pregnancy centers. Some medical experts warn that many give out misleading and false information. Here's News 2's Adam Mincer.
Kaylee Cornett says the Hope Clinic is clear about what it does and doesn't offer pregnant women.
We're helping them to make a decision that lines up with their value system, and then we're going to help them live that out.
Governor Lee wants to help them. On Monday, he said he wants to write a huge check to crisis pregnancy centers like the Hope Clinic.
I'm proposing a $100 million grant program to partner with nonprofits that serve mothers and fathers and families during a crisis pregnancy.
If it's approved by the General Assembly, Tennessee would spend more on these centers than nearly any other state.
This amount of funding from a single state in a single year is extraordinary.
The Hope Clinic sees this funding as a way to help even more women by providing more ultrasounds, STD testing, and pregnancy counseling.
We do not provide prenatal care. We want them to be seeing a great OB, but we want to have a place where she can come ask questions to and we can refer her out.
The Hope Clinic says that they're here for moms during every step of the parenting process, including some of their kids' firsts, like first diapers, maybe the kid's first blanket, or even the kid's first crib. They say this is for free or at a reduced price. Critics say it does come with a price.
Their primary mission is to prevent people from getting abortion.
Medical groups like the American Public Health Association say these clinics have been found to distribute misleading, medically inaccurate, and false information.
I would say there's no evidence that crisis pregnancy center services actually help.
She says these clinics' ultrasound services offer less medical information than a woman would get at a doctor's office, and says the facilities often lack proper medical oversight. But the Hope Clinic says they have registered nurses on staff, an OB who oversees the clinic, and thousands of happy clients. In Nashville, Adam Mintzer, News 2.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. Governor Bill Lee delivered his 5th State of the State address this week as he began his second term in office. While the governor is touting Tennessee's leadership qualities, Democrats aren't so sure. Governor Bill Lee made his first State of the State address since winning re-election. The governor says Tennessee is leading the nation.
In 2019, I stood in this chamber and said, Tennessee can lead the nation. And tonight, standing on the shoulders of giants who came before us, I say with great pride that Tennessee is leading the nation, and the state of our beloved state is prosperous, hopeful, and unrivaled.
The governor proposed a 3-month sales tax holiday on food.
Last August, we gave Tennessee families a 1-month break from grocery taxes to provide relief amid the nationwide inflation. We should do that again this year, but let's extend it to 3 consecutive months.
Tennessee was flush with cash, and we had a lot of money to do a lot of things. And, you know, the governor has put forward some things that we feel are good ideas, the sales tax, which is something that Democrats have been proposing. They're buying into our concepts and our ideas, which I think is good, you know, that the administration is finally joining us with sales tax relief on working families.
The governor proposed small business tax relief.
I'm also introducing the Tennessee Works Act to deliver more than $150 million in annual tax relief to small businesses and expand Tennessee's competitive edge for years to come.
I will say I was really impressed and looking forward to continuing to work with the governor's office on the investment in small businesses. That's something that we've been saying, you know, for years. Small businesses are the backbone, the real heart of our country and our state. And now potentially 37,000 businesses across the state will not have to pay any sort of taxes on their franchise and excise taxes. That's a big deal. So that's something that should be applauded.
The governor detailed a transportation strategy.
It is time to invest in a transportation strategy for one of the fastest growing states in the country. We cannot solve this problem with debt or higher taxes, but we have to do something. Right now, there is a $26 billion backlog of projects across the state. Simply put, we are way behind. And we have to change the way we fund and build our roads and our bridges. We know that we have to tackle big urban projects, but if we don't change our strategy, we also know who will end up paying the price, our rural communities. And that's why I'm introducing the Transportation Modernization Act, a plan to engage public-private partnerships, to build additional choice lanes on urban highways, to ensure electric vehicle owners pay their share in maintaining our roads, and to provide a delivery model that builds rural and urban projects faster, all without the burden falling on Tennessee taxpayers.
He mentioned choice lanes, which is something that we believe, you know, there's so many more options like light rail that we did not talk about. There's so many more options available here that this seems like a very limited way of moving people.
The governor increased education funding.
Last year, we reformed the public school funding formula for the first time in 30 years and invested in a historic amount to fund Tennessee students based on their individual needs. And this year, I'm proposing an additional investment of $350 million into the TISA formula. And that includes $125 million for teacher pay raises. When I came into office, the minimum pay for teachers was set at $35,000. we're proposing legislation that, if it passes, will increase the minimum teacher pay by the time I leave office to $50,000.
We all know that the additional funding for teachers, I think it's like a 4% raise, is something. But when you look at the rates of inflation and everything that teachers have to handle with teacher shortages, is that really going to move the needle forward? A little concerned about that. When we have an opportunity to invest real dollars in Tennessee beyond even what TISA covers, we chose not to do that. We chose to instead put additional funds into our rainy day fund when we already have a lot of money in that fund. We have a lot of money in our reserves. I think in our schools, our teachers would argue it's raining right now for them.
I've always believed that we should strive to have the best public school system in the country and provide choices for parents. There are some who claim that you have to choose either or, but these two ideas are not in conflict. In fact, excelling in both is how we lead in education.
The governor paid respects to Tyree Nichols.
We have been in prayer, constant prayer, for the Nichols family since they tragically lost their son Tyree last month. Their courage, their compassion, and the compassion shown by the people of Memphis is a picture of hope.
I was pleased that he mentioned something about the Tyree Nichols family. He didn't talk about reform. He did talk about increasing funding to law enforcement, but we had hoped that he'd talk a little bit more about reform and the things that we need to do within law enforcement. But I was appreciative of the fact that he did mention and honor the Nichols family.
The governor talked about ways to improve school safety.
Every single person has a role to play in school safety. That's why we have a school safety toolkit for every parent. And we have the SafeTN app, where any Tennessean can report suspicious activity. And this year, we're doubling down. New legislation to enhance physical security in classrooms. We're also proposing funding to place at least one Homeland Security agent in each of our 95 counties. We have done a lot to make schools safer, but I do not want to look up months from now and think we should have done more. I intend to make this a priority in this budget and every year after this.
I understand school safety is important, but we are a state that is open carry. And, having more resource officers in schools has not been shown to reduce incidences of violence. If anything, you see a lot of students who themselves are victims of, extreme enforcing or, really instead of it being something that's dealt with administratively, it's something that's dealt with by law enforcement.
The governor proposed free diapers for low-income families.
Tennessee has the opportunity to ease one of the biggest financial burdens on mothers. We are going to propose covering the cost of diapers during the first 2 years of a baby's life for mothers on TennCare.
Putting money back in the hands of families. The example he gave with the diapers we think was great. That's things that, like I said, the administration is finally getting on board with some of our ideas, some of our concepts.
If that is approved, Tennessee will be the first Medicaid program in the nation to implement this kind of support. That is pro-life and that is pro-family.
We do appreciate an investment that's long overdue in mothers and families with an investment in diapers for TennCare patients, giving them free diapers over 2 years, making sure we extend postpartum coverage to 12 months so that mothers can make sure that they live not only before and during the pregnancy, but afterwards.
The governor talked about DCS improvements.
The needs of Tennessee children have evolved, and our approach to serving them must evolve too. We built a team at our Department of Children's Services that's ready to move forward and provide better services. We've already hired dozens of new qualified caseworkers. And DCS caseworkers have an incredibly difficult job, and they deserve our support. Last year, we provided 2 pay raises for caseworkers, and I intend to boost their pay again in this budget. And we are also proposing more than $190 million in additional resources to support the mission of DCS and provide for the safety and well-being of Tennessee children.
With respect to DCS, we think that there's more that can be done. We appreciate the funding that's going there for the workers, increasing salaries, but we did not talk about caseloads. You can increase salaries, and people, appreciative of that, but the caseload is just so high that it's still causing problems. We want to see more of that type of reform.
The governor proposed $100 million for crisis pregnancy centers.
Last year, Tennessee's budget funded ultrasound machines at crisis pregnancy clinics all across the state. This year, I'm proposing a $100 million grant program to partner with nonprofits that serve mothers and fathers and families during a crisis pregnancy.
But what we don't agree with is $100 million being put in crisis pregnancy centers. These are centers that offer no health care services. In a state that has taken women's rights away and offering $100 million of crisis pregnancy centers, that's 5 times more dollars than they're investing in teen care. That money could be used for something else that is going to actually help mothers and families. So while we do appreciate a long overdue investment into mothers and families, we also challenge the governor to be more responsible about the money that we had. That $100 million of crisis pregnancy centers could be used for even more expansion of teen care. It could be used for more services for mothers. It could be used in additional raises for healthcare professionals. It could be used for more raises for teachers. It could be used in so many other things that are actually pro-life instead of businesses that are wasting money to convince families to do something that should be a decision between themselves, their families, and their doctors.
The governor says Tennessee is leading the nation.
In my very first State of the State, I said, if we lead Tennessee well, Tennessee may well lead the nation. Tennessee is leading.
We have tremendous opportunity. Our state it has tremendous assets and financial reserves at its disposal. So the question to ask is, what are our priorities? Are they the issues affecting Tennessee families on a daily basis? Are we going to improve public schools? Are we going to build out a modern transportation infrastructure system? Are we going to improve infrastructure for every community across the state of Tennessee? Are we going to provide people with access to vital health care? That all remains up in the air. And, this governor's not shown any willingness to follow through on his words in the past, so we'll see where it goes from here.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back. In his second State of the Union address, President Biden challenged the Republican-controlled Congress to work with him to finish the job of rebuilding the economy and uniting the nation. The president faces a divided Congress and opposition from both of Tennessee's U.S. senators. Here's Ike Ajashi in Washington.
The President of the United States.
In his second State of the Union address, President Biden speaking directly to the American people, making a case that the United States is stronger than ever.
Because the soul of this nation is strong, because the backbone of this nation is strong, because the people of this nation are strong. The State of the Union is strong.
Biden touting his accomplishments like providing health care for veterans and passing the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which includes some gun control measures and mental health resources for minors. Biden going a step further, calling on Congress to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, all while the families of Tyree Nichols, George Floyd, Tamir Rice, and Michael Brown listen closely.
Let's come together to finish the job on police reform.
The president also highlighting cooling inflation numbers on top of a strong jobs report.
2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years.
Biden defending what he's calling American values, drawing a contrast to far-right Republicans who looked to subvert democracy during the January 6th attack on the Capitol.
2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threats in the Civil War, and today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken. And to my Republican friends, if we could work together the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work together and find consensus on important things in this Congress as well.
Meanwhile, newly elected Arkansas governor and former press secretary under Donald Trump, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, delivering the Republican response.
Tennessee Republican U.S. Senators Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty reacted to the president's speech.
And as I've been in Tennessee talking with Tennesseans this weekend, they feel like the State of the Union is not in very good shape. When Joe Biden walked into the Oval Office, inflation was at 1.4%. It hit a high of 9.1% this year, and I think it's right about 6.5% right now. The cost of food is up 13% over last year. The price at the pump is up. These are things that Tennesseans are worried about.
I'll tell you that I was eager to hear the president address the current state of our nation, as it's something I hear about constantly from Tennesseans across my home state. Every day, I hear from Tennesseans who express their concerns about the direction of our country, their fears about the diminishing ability of their own family to make ends meet, and their deep frustrations for the state of our beautiful union. Unfortunately, President Biden's remarks tonight did little to allay my deep concern that he's simply disconnected from the feelings of the average American.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment.